everybody. The lighting is really weird there. So let me turn it around this way. Turn you out to face the garden. Perfect. All right. So today I want to talk about endings. I want to talk about endings and beginnings. Thank you everyone who's popped in to the Sanity Saver demo program. It's been 2 months. We've been working together for 2 months. Some of you have almost been here for every single one, just about. So we've probably got a lot of work, piled up in our studios. And, it's very easy to carry on making studies and doing repetitive exercises. And that's great. It's really, it's a real sort of release for emotions. But, there comes a point where we want to finish our paintings and, present them and, maybe sell them. And of course we've got hundreds of demos that we've done. I've got them all up there. I'm going to go through them this weekend and, just sort them all out. But we've made lots of paintings along the way as well. And I thought I would talk today a little bit about varnishing, how we can finish off some of our oil and cold wax paintings, and what we could do as regards presentation, because I think these things are, you're all doing your own presentation, you're all happy with that, but I thought I'd just share some of the things that I do. There might be a tip or two that you can pick up from something. So the first thing to talk about is, different types of varnishes, and I covered this yesterday, so I'll go through it again, but Winsor & Newton do make satin varnishes, gloss varnishes in spray cans, so you can use that quite effectively on cold wax paintings. The nice thing about these is it doesn't disturb anything on the surface, and particularly if you're using dry pigments, these spray varnishes are really useful. And I'll show you some paintings where I've done that too, and you can just see the surface. The other varnish that I use is retouch varnish. If I think I might be working a bit longer on a painting, might need a little bit more work, or I just want to increase the saturation a little bit, if it's gone a bit flat, if it's sort of sunk in a little bit, a spray of retouch varnish, and you can then carry on working on your painting for a bit longer. Probably as a permanent varnish it wouldn't be ideal, because if you want to clean your painting, the retouch varnish probably isn't strong enough to provide a complete barrier. But it's very useful if you're in mid-flight, as it were, to your paintings. The other thing I did want to talk about is the Lascaux brand of fixative, and I found this brand of fixative extremely useful if you're using pastel, or if you're using dry pigment on top of your cold wax paintings. What I often do is I will spray a layer of the Lascaux fixative on my painting and leave that to dry, obviously, and it'll just help to fix the pigment, the dry pigment within the painting, and then I can put a spray varnish over the top of that. That works extremely well. Or even if you're doing a watercolour, like we did some watercolours with some dry pastel, then that fixative is extremely good, and it doesn't cause too much darkening of the pigment, which is the problem with most fixatives. So I really recommend these products, these spray products, if you are working with things that are quite delicate on the surface. So I'll swing you around to the work now. Okay, here we go. I've given you a close-up view of everything, and hi Conchita, ¿cómo está? Lovely, hello Jen, hello, lovely to see you, Mara, Janet, gosh, you've come, you're watching from a long way, lots of you are watching from a long way, so that's fabulous. I've brought I'm not going to do any painting today because I just wanted to talk about presentation and fixatives and things. This is a painting that we did of the roses, and you can get in there quite closely and you can see there's lots of different layered detail. Now if I used a a varnish, a standard varnish over this, what would happen is we would lose some of the interest that happens between the thick and thin passages. Okay, so what is interesting about the painting at the moment is the difference between these thin transparent passages and these opaque passages. So varnishing really would unfortunately destroy a lot of this detail, particularly up here on this one, or here where we can see this passage transitioning to this one. Because this is quite thin, you know, we'll lose that with a shiny varnish. So I've sprayed this with the Winsor & Newton matte varnish, which is this one here, which is that one there. Special offer even, look at that. So that has just kept the luster of the painting, has kept the colour of the painting, which is a very, very tricky colour, but it's kept the colour without destroying the sense of spatial depth. Alright, because varnishing often destroys that sense of spatial depth, and it flattens, though it brings up saturation. So it's a trade-off, isn't it, all the time. So I've put this mount here, so it's kind of isolated a little bit, the painting. I might move the camera back a bit later and take that down. Right, so this was an earlier painting we did on the irises, and you can see it's quite different. There's a saturation to the colour all over, and in fact I wanted it to be almost like one colour shimmering with a few highlights, a few points of colour coming out. That's what I was really after. Now this has been varnished with a picture varnish, and it is quite shiny actually. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, you can see that. Yeah, look at that. Can you see? It's very shiny. I've got it up on the easel, so you might not see it so well when it's upright, but I just showed you just now, you can see how shiny it is. Okay, that's using a Damar picture varnish. This is a zested one, and I quite like this because what I'm talking about before is synergy of products. So if we're using a brand like Zested, it's nice to stay with that because you get a synergy going between all the different waxes or the type of Damar that's being used. For example, how refined is that? So I've used this particular varnish, but of course there's all sorts, all different brands. There's Gamsol, Gamvar. Gamvar is another one that I use sometimes as well. So with this one, you do need to shake it up. You can see that the Damar resin is in there. You do need to shake this up. It'll look slightly cloudy once I've shaken it all up, okay, like that. But it doesn't mean that it dries cloudy. That's just the Damar in there. And you want to wait till these little bubbles have stopped bubbling. When you pour it out actually into a container, that's probably the best way to do it. Let those bubbles disappear because you don't really want bubbles on your painting. Then you want to use a soft brush. So there's the soft brush. Again, these are actually watercolor brushes. I mean, it's a synthetic fiber, but it's a watercolor brush. And you know, I'll use these sort of brushes because they're very soft. So when I want to varnish, you know, I can sort of come in different directions and then come up and down and so forth and cover the surface. I won't be scrubbing like this. I'll be layering it on quite carefully. I tend to use the wider brush if I am varnishing. But you know, you can see with this painting that there is a difference in the surface quality. So there is not so much difference between the transparent dark that I'm always talking about and the opaque light. So there is a leveling out that's happened. However, the saturation on this is much stronger, and it really has brought out the yellows. which is why I used the Daymar varnish. So it does depend on the painting, and this is on a piece of multimedia board. It's got an old painting on the back. Look at that. This is on a multimedia board. So and I've painted on the back. So how am I going to mount that? Well, I mean, I could get that traditionally framed, and they'll put a frame around it like that. But what if I wanted to mount it myself? What would I have to do? I could get a panel like so. So this is just a wooden panel, and so I could just get the wooden panel. I'll move this over and move this around, and I would give this a light sanding, and I would give the back of this painting, which has got a painting on it, a light sanding, and then I would use clear gesso. I would use clear gesso to coat the back of the painting. Okay, so that would need a coating of clear gesso on the back of the painting, and I would leave that to dry. So leave the gesso to dry on there. Normally this would be I'm kind of using up my materials. I'm trying not to waste materials, so there we are. Then on this, which has been sanded, I would get matte medium, which acts like a glue. So actually, really, a lot of these acrylic binders, when you look at the consistency of them, it's a bit like, it's not PVA glue, but it's a very similar product to PVA glue. I wouldn't use PVA glue because when it dries, it can crack. So I would definitely use something like matte medium or wood glue. Sometimes if it's a really troublesome painting, this is what I would call a troublesome painting to glue down onto that. I would definitely call that trouble. But I would probably on this one, after sanding and putting the gesso, the clear gesso on here, because the gesso is going to seal the back, which has got a whole lot of rubbish on it. Using that matte medium or wood glue, I would then glue this to the panel like so. This panel's slightly large for this, but I would glue this to the panel, and using that, and I would then wait it for quite a long time, and I'd try and keep it as dry as possible as well. So often I'll take these panels as they're drying and I'll put them in my house, because the studio can get a little damp, and so you want this as dry as possible. You don't want moisture getting in here because it won't stick, and you can get any excess glue off from behind there, and just sand that down later. But the main thing is to really make sure that both surfaces are clean and dry before you start the gluing process. And the layer of clear gesso first, even on the panel, if you wanted to do that, you can put that clear gesso down on that panel first, and it will help with the adherence of the panel there. So that's what you can do with multimedia board. That's one way of framing it, or obviously the traditional way of framing it. This way, I guess you don't need to have a frame around it. You can just have it on the panel. But yes, you can see the difference. You can see the difference with the gloss varnish on there. Okay. So that's one product there that you can do. The other way that I have framed things in the past, or here's one that I've actually done. Okay, so here's a piece of multimedia board that I've stuck to a panel already, and I've actually just put tape around the sides just to keep it clean. It's been weighted, it's got some other rubbish on it, but it's been weighted, and there's nothing, it's not coming off at all. There's no buckling or anything, and it's just had weights on top of it to keep it from lifting. Hello Wayne, hello Charlotte, hi Heather, hi Carolyn, lovely to see you, Carolyn. So that's a good way. And look, if any of you have bought investment art or art from people, and something's going wrong, these are the sort of things that you might find could be going wrong in your paintings, that they're starting to lift or something like that. So those are things you can contend with, that they might have to take it off the panel and re-glue it. It is a little problematic, but it's good to know what might be causing that. So that's multimedia board on panel and how to deal with it. This one is the lilac painting. Just deciding which way it goes up. Right. Okay, so I framed this myself. Sorry, it's got crumbs. It's got crumbs. It's that linen panel that we've been using all along. And the frame itself has a little rebate, and you can pop your panel. Into that. It literally just slots in there. Now, I bought this from Jackson's. It wasn't expensive. It was something like, I think it was about £30. This is a 30 centimeter, 12 inch by 12 inch painting, 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter painting. For £30, it's very, very good value, and I just really love the look of this. I didn't want glass on this painting because I wanted the linen. I did want the linen to show, and I also wanted the textures of this lilac as well. So, if I put glass behind that, you're going to lose all that, aren't you? But at the same time, it is a little delicate. So, having this rebate in like this will protect this painting. All right, because we had ink on here and cold wax, different media on here, and dry pigment as well. So it's one of those things that you probably don't want to frame flush. You don't really want people rubbing their hands over it. It's but you could still you can still touch it. And this has been finished with a spray varnish, okay, and it's kept the quality of the linen. So it still looks, I wanted it to look like a bit of curtain fabric actually, which kind of does, but it's kept the quality of the linen. All right. So that's kind of a tray frame, as they call it. Because endings and beginnings are always a problem, aren't they, with artwork? How do we finish, and what are our options? And the framer goes, what would you like? And you go, I don't know, what would you suggest? And you kind of go round and round in circles. This is a tray frame here. So this is what they look like. All right. And let's move the camera back just a tad, because you can see a bit more of it. There we go. So this is a tray frame. So the whole thing comes as one piece, and it's got the screw holes already. The screw holes are already in it. Okay, so that's got that all done. This was exhibited in a competition somewhere. And I've taken the painting out and done something with it or sold it. So that's they're quite good. So that's very similar to the Jackson's panel. And remember, we did these guys, so that would actually just fit in a bit better than that, but it would kind of fit in here. Again, this is on that linen. This is a linen covered board, and this will fit on there like that. Now you can see how rebated that is. What you could do is to get some little squares of either Velcro or some foam core. Pieces of foam core, and you could mount it so that it sits out a little bit from the back, and you can see it there. So if I turn it just this way to the edge, you could frame it so it sits another sort of half an inch off the back of the board, and frame it that way. Okay, but again, that's something you could do yourself, and you could buy that frame from Jackson's as well, or something very similar, and get that reasonably priced. Now with this one again, I've used the matte spray varnish because I want to keep the quality of the linen. And it's quite, you know, it's one of those paintings that wouldn't look so good with the shiny varnish on it. And we had this one here, which is, it's funny, I'm looking at this through the camera. I don't normally get a chance to do this, so I'm actually seeing it through my camera, and I can see how blue the camera picks up. And I've got daylights in the studio, so but it looks quite blue there. So again, that could go in. That's got a lot of wax on this painting. There's quite a strong, particularly in the impasto part down the bottom here. So I don't want this behind glass because I think, you know, you would lose all that lovely detail. So, you know, again, I have just given this one actually a coat of clear wax. So this one I've just used the cold wax painting medium, and I've used it and slightly buffed. This has got no pigment in it, this painting, so I've given it a slightly buffed surface. So I've used a soft cloth for that, the cold wax painting medium, and I've just rubbed it on like that. And what you can see to this one now, which is different to the plant pot one, is there is a slight shine to this surface. You can see it when it's sitting up too. There's a slight shine to the surface. So this is just with cold wax medium, and it's buffed up. So, you know, that kind of gives it a kind of a glow, a kind of a smoothness to it. So that's another way of using cold wax. I'll see if I can reach it. That's another way of using cold wax painting medium. Because don't forget, cold wax painting medium has Daymar varnish in it as part of its makeup. So it can work as a varnish. And I got interested in cold wax about at least 15 years ago. Could even be 20 years ago. But I was using cold wax, or I was using wax and Daymar as a varnish and rubbing it onto my paintings. That's how I got into cold wax. So I've been using it as a varnish for a long time, because I love this kind of very soft, satiny surface. So, you know, you can do this to your oil paintings. You can add that cold wax varnish as a varnish to your acrylic paintings, and I use it on acrylic all the time. You can use it over your watercolor paintings if you want this kind of finish as well. If you do this over your watercolor paintings, you don't actually need to put them behind glass, which is great, but it wouldn't work for some of the competitions or some of the open submissions like the RI or something. So that has to be done behind glass. So well, or supposed to be. I think I've seen a few coming in now, but you know, you'll get this lovely satin finish if you use cold wax as a varnish. Now, moving on to this painting here. So this one is a little more problematic because this has quite a lot of dry pigment. When you're right in close so you can focus in on that. So just in here, it's still a little wet, is quite a lot of dry pigment. So I haven't sprayed this with anything. I haven't done anything to this yet. It's still drying, and that dry pigment will need to be fixed with the Lascaux fixative before I put the spray varnish on, because I'll need to fix all that dry pigment that's in here. So this is going to take another couple of weeks to dry. That'll take a little while. You know, you can't rush that process, but also I don't want to lose any of the detail either. So I wouldn't use a shiny varnish on this. I think it would spoil the surface. So how do you know when a painting is finished? There's this a discussion I have, you know, with lots of people, lots of groups. Conchita is Fredo, not encaustica. Senza encaustica is for cold wax. So, you know, you often look at something, how do I know if that's finished or not? You know, and I could come in and put a little more detail perhaps in some things. I don't know. I just pick up a frame and I just run it across the painting like so. And, you know, if there's anything glaringly obvious that doesn't work, then I know that the painting isn't finished. But I can run this frame over the whole painting pretty much, and you know, it all stands its ground. Hi Claire, nice to see you. You know, and Niall, lovely. You know, I can see, you know, that this painting is quite strong, because any one of these little bits could be a painting. So that means, for me, it tells me that this is pretty close to being finished, because there are no weak places in this painting. The composition and the colour hold up throughout the whole work. So if you don't know whether your painting is finished, if you're not confident, you know, get a frame. You can see the white pigment here as I was rubbing that over. You know, get a frame and, you know, just run it over your painting, and that will tell you whether, you know, whether that painting is finished or not. It's a really useful tool and a way to get an idea of if your work is ready to be framed. Often, you know, take them to be framed and you look at it, you think, oh, I should have done this and should have done that, and that is often a bit of a a sad thing. Yesterday I worked a little bit on this painting of a house. It is quite interesting looking at it like this. You're not quite seeing the whole painting, so I'll swing you from one end to the other. Okay, so this is sort of like a trees scene. So this has a lot of dark down the bottom, and you know, that's something that, you know, when I'm thinking about a frame for something like this, that, you know, you want something that, you know, you can enjoy everything. And it's something I've pointed out before is, you know, it's really nice if you've got four corners that are different. So here we have a very strong yellow. Here we have a yellow that's tinged with red. We've got the red over the dark, and in this corner here we have blue. So, you know, there's a good counterpoint between the edges of this painting, and it gives us a stronger idea of, you know, how this composition is working. It's working on a diagonal basis as well, and these four corners. So this is an ideal painting again to have float mounted, because it's really important to see those edges. This painting would also work if it was cut off from the bottom. This would be a painting you could crop. So I could crop it here, and it also looks quite good. So you crop off the dark, and it has a whole different feel. But I did that yesterday and I thought, oh, I quite like that. That's something quite different. Now a framer could cut that for you if you wanted. So that's the beauty of these linen panels, is that you can actually cut those. So that's another thing to look at. But that's what we talked about yesterday, and we finished this yesterday because it was just grasses, and I was saying, you know, to find a focal point, and I added this building in here, but the building is a reserve of what was underneath, so I masked it off, kept that, and then painted around the mask, and then ripped the masking tape off, and the building was right there for us. So that was quite a handy way of putting in a building without painting a building. It just looks a bit more sitting like it's sitting in the landscape. And I think one more I have. Okay, so I framed up my poppies as well, and this is quite different. see the light up there. Turn that off. Just turn that off for a minute, just so you haven't got such a strong light on there. So this was more problematic. I needed to concentrate on the composition a bit more, and there was a lot of composition out on the edges, over on the sides, and I just found by cropping this composition, what I've ended up doing is putting more emphasis into the middle of the painting. So I've taken off some of the dark that's below here and some of the light that's up there, and then I've put it in this frame like so. Let's come back, sorry about that light, there's nothing I can do about that. So I've just popped it in that frame, and I just think with the sort of off-white matte and the white frame, it sort of just makes that red sing. So that was a decision I made. I didn't really want it in the black. I could have done it in a neutral frame as well. That one is behind glass. It's got quite a lot of pigment on it as well, so I just sort of thought, you know, that I liked the brightness of the pigment, so it seemed quite nice to pop that behind glass. There's quite a lot of texture in the poppies anyway, so you can still see that. You know, and the glazing kind of adds a varnished look without varnishing, so you can see all the sort of yellow pigment that I've put into here as well. So that's quite, you know, that's quite loose. If someone rubbed up against the yellow pigment, even with the fixative, you might stand a chance of that rubbing off. So, you know, in this case, the glass is probably the best way to protect that. So, okay. Are there any questions about varnishing or finishing off paintings? Is there anything that you would like to know? You can just write a message in the chat box there. But there are so many ways of finishing off those paintings. So I think, you know, if you have any problems with varnishing of cold wax, you know, do let me know, and I can probably just give you, you know, a few pointers as to how, you know, what could help. There's 3 different ways. We've got the spray varnishes, we've got the brush on varnishes, and we've got cold wax itself, which we can use as a varnish. Okay, well, thank you for joining me for these Sanity Saver demos. It's been great. I mean, I'll be doing more things online, obviously, but I won't be putting it under the project of Sanity Saver demos. I'm going to just draw a line here, and I'm probably going to put them all into some sort of online publication or something like that, so that I'll go through all the recipes and all the processes of every exercise that we did, and then you can sort of follow through if you want to. Yes, Karen, the cold wax as a buff I did on one of the paintings. Let me see. This one. So I don't know if you were here for that, but that's just cold wax as a buff, and you can see it's quite different from the poppies. It has a matte satin finish on it, so you know that does look quite different from the varnished paintings. So yeah, I do use that, but I don't use the cold wax as a buff if I've got dry pigment, because the dry pigment will just go everywhere and smudge. So, you know, it just depends on what materials you're using. All right, great. Oh, I'm pleased you found that all helpful. I know it's a lot of information, but you know, it's you know, if you can, you could probably find the ones that you like working with, and then go for that, you know, whatever, you know. I use cold wax on some of my acrylic and watercolor paintings as well, because, you know, it's a great way to, you know, say I want to turn a watercolor painting into an oil painting, I can just put a little bit of oil pastel or something on it, you know, and a little bit of wax. It works really well. All right, lovely. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. We've done very well. That was all about endings, beginnings and endings. I guess that's the ending for the Sanity Saver demo, and the beginning as we're heading out of lockdown slowly and getting back into our lives. So that's great, Valerie. I'm pleased that was that was of some use to you, and but I guess I'll see you guys around. All right, take care and catch you later. Bye.